Greetings, this is Amy Wentley with Chai Knuckles Knitting, and this is episode 2021-5, Zahavi Side Seams. So I'm teaching an online class on the Zahavi pullover by Emily Greene, which is a pattern sold by Brooklyn Tweed. The sweater's being done in Brooklyn Tweed Arbor. I think it's called seafoam color. And we're at the point now where I finished the back and front and blocked it. And this is a series of 3 videos on how to finish the front and the back. The last video was on the exposed joinery bind off, and that's the bind off that's done at the shoulder seams on the sweater. And so I've done that already, and now I'm ready to do the side seams. So this is what your sweater looks like from the side, and you're going to need to know a couple of things before you do this. If you decided to do the vent, this side seam is actually going to go from the top of the vent here, a certain measurement up to the bottom of the armhole. So you're going to need to consult the schematic of your pattern to find out, and that's going to be the vent to armhole distance. I'm doing the smallest size, and for that distance is 3 inches from the top of the vent to the bottom of my armhole. And I'm going to want to mark this on both sides that I'm going to be seaming together. So I have my 0 down here, and I'm going to measure up to 3, and I am going to get a stitch marker, and I am going to mark where 3 is on here, and I'm just going to slip the marker into the side there just so I know where that is. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close that marker. There we go. I'm going to come to my other side, and I am going to measure 3 inches again from the top of my vent. Let's do 3 inches. That's the top of my vent to 3 inches up, and what's fortunate is it looks like it's a similar part of the side seam, because as you'll see, we're having these chevrons come together, and when we seam, we're going to want to have those chevrons coming together at exactly those places. So I now know where the top of my vent is. I now know where the bottom of my armhole is going to be. What I want to do is I want to take some stitch markers, and I just want to join these seams together so I have a visual idea of what's going on here. So I'm going to mark the top of the vent here, and I'm going to join it to the top of the vent on the front. So this is my back, this is my front. And I'm going to get a couple more markers and do that at, whoops, that was wrong. Phew, pay attention to what you're doing. This is the top of the vent right here. And as a matter of fact, what I'll do for you is I'll go ahead and bring this in a little closer right now so you can see that a little bit better. How's that? Nice, huh? So this is the top of your vent right here. So you're going to want to put your marker through the top of that vent and then join it to the top of the vent on the front piece and join them together. So those are the tops of both vents. And then these chevrons are going to come together. So that's very convenient because I can just pin the chevrons together. I'm going to put one more pin in here on the next chevron. I love patterns like this that have kind of just a natural way for you to eye how things are going to go together. And then I'm just going to take one of these pins up here that marked my 3 inches and just join that together like that. Now what's nice is this is a very short side seam, so it's not going to take you long to do this at all. So let me show you a couple of concepts before we get started on here. In order to get started with a seam, you are going to want to do a figure 8 knot. So here are instructions for you. What you're going to do is you're going to have a right piece and a left piece. The right sides are going to be facing you. You're going to be joining these with the public sides facing you. okay? In order to do a figure 8 knot, you are going to take a piece of yarn, and I want you to just cut a piece of yarn that you're comfortable sewing with. If the yarn gets too long, then you are just untangling and just fighting with the yarn the whole time. And so I want you to not have to worry about that. So just cut a piece of yarn that you're comfortable sewing with. Go ahead and thread a darning needle. And this darning needle is really big for demonstration purposes. You don't have to use one this long. You want to use a blunt tip. The bent tip ones are nice too. But what you're going to do is you're going to come under the right piece from below. So you're going to scoop up under and come out that way. Then you're going to go over to the left piece, and you're actually going to come under that one too and up. Then you're going to come back to the right piece, and you're going to come under that one too. So it's under, 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 and then you're going to pull it tight, and there's going to be a knot there that's not going to go anywhere. It's called a figure 8 knot. Okay? So that's one concept you need to know. What we're going to be doing too is we're going to be joining the two pieces. We're going to be joining them one stitch in from the edge, and we're going to be joining each stitch to the other. We're going to be coming up through ladders. Now this picture is a little bit difficult to see. But I'm going to draw on it so you're going to be able to see better, okay? What you have here is you're going to be actually, this is your right side, this is your left side. You're going to be joining up through the ladders between the first stitch. So this is your edge stitch. And edge stitches tend to be kind of wonky. They're kind of these knots and V's, and they're kind of ugly on the edge. This is your first column of nice knit stitch V's, okay? You're going to be picking up the ladders between those two columns, and I will show you how to do that. And you're going to be picking up the ladders on this side also. So this side you've got your wonky edge stitch, but this is your column of V's, your first good column of V's. So that's what you're going to be doing, is you're going to be joining those ladders together. So here's another picture for you, just so you can see those ladders. This is, I put a wooden stick through where the ladders are so that you'll be able to see them a little bit better. So this is the wonky edge stitch. This is the first column of good V's. And these are your ladders in between. So the way the side seaming is going to work is you are going to start with a figure 8 knot, and when you're done, you're going to come out of here. You're going to bring your needle over to the first ladder on the left-hand piece, and you're going to scoop under the ladder, and you're going to come up through around, and you're going to come right back in where you came out at the beginning. You're going to scoop your needle under the next ladder. That's the ladder right there. And you're going to have your needle follow across the seam, and you're going to come back in where you came out here, and you're going to scoop under the ladder and come across. Scoop under that ladder and come across. Scoop under that ladder and come across. Scoop under that ladder. And then after about 5 sets, you're going to pull the yarn tight. So we're going to go through that on the real piece right now. So here is your sweater. Here is the side seam that I pinned already. Those are my 3 pins. Okay. Let's see if I can get the rest of the sweater kind of out of the way so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so let me get my yarn. Here's my yarn and my needle. Okay. I'm going to start at the very bottom, and I'm going to work my way to the top. So I'm going to be starting at the top of the vent. So I'm going to take my marker out. I can see very clearly here where the tops of my vents are. So I am going to come up on the edge stitch here from the bottom, from underneath, and I'm going to pull it up through the top and I'm going to leave a tail here that I can weave in later. Okay. Then I am going to come to the top of this vent, and I am going to come through the edge stitch on the top of this vent from underneath and pull it through. And then I'm going to come back to my right side again, and I am going to come up underneath in the exact same place where I came up the first time. Right back where I started. And then I'm going to take my 2 ends of my yarn and I'm going to pull it to be a knot. So that's my figure 8 knot. Okay, now I'm going to take out this next marker, because I know I want my 2 chevrons to come together, right? And so what I'm going to do is, you can manhandle your knitting, okay? Here is my edge stitch. I can probably even get closer than that for you all. Let's see if I can. Ooh, I can. Okay, so this is the wonky edge stitch. There's like a knot and a stitch and a knot and a stitch. So that's the wonky edge stitch right there. This is the pretty V-stitch. We want to get the ladders between the 2 of them. So I'm going to actually spread them apart. So I'm going to spread my first wonky stitch away from the knit stitches. And I'm going to come down. I just came up on the right hand side, and I'm going to spread the stitches on the left hand side too. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the left hand side, and I am going to come under the first, let's see if we can show you this, the first ladder on the right hand side. This is my good column right there. These are the wonky stitches right here. And I am going to go through the first ladder between those 2 columns of stitches. So that's the wonky column, that's the good column. I've got the ladder between the 2. So I'm going to pull that through, and then I'm going to come to the ladder over on the right hand side. So this is the good stitch, this is the wonky stitch. I'm going to grab the ladder between the 2 of them. There's the good stitch, there's the wonky stitch. And make sure you don't make any knots with your yarn. Keep them out of the way. Now you don't have to pull tight yet. We're going to do that after about 5 of these. So I'm going to go back over to the left hand side, and this is where my yarn came out before. If you can see, it came out here. I'm going to go back in there, and I'm going to go under the ladder right above that hole and pull it through. And then I'm going to go back over to the right side, and I'm actually going to go down where I came up before and get the next ladder, like that. And then I'm going to come over to the left hand side, and I'm going to come down. This is where I came up before. Right there is where I came up before. So I'm going to put my needle right back down to where I came up before and come under the ladder and pull through. And I'm going to keep doing that, coming down where I came up and getting the next ladder. Coming down where I came up and getting the next ladder. Come down where I came up. Okay, so I think I've done that maybe about 5 times now. And always double checking that you're getting those ladders between the nice column of stitches and the edge stitch. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to get about that far, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my yarn at the beginning and my yarn at the end here, and I'm going to pull them tight. And that brings both sides of my seam together right here, and what you end up having is 2 columns of knit stitches butted right up against each other very nicely, and you can't see the seam. at all. And you will continue doing this until you get to the top of the seam. And I am going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to go ahead and complete the seam until we're a few stitches from the top, and I'll show you how to end it. And you don't have to worry about running out of yarn because this is a 3-inch seam, so it's not very long. So we'll be right back. Greetings, I'm back. There's a few things I wanted to show you. I'm about halfway done with this seam. I'm coming up on the marker on one of the chevrons, and I did want to point out that when you get to the chevrons, and when you're going to get a ladder, it's going to start feeling like you're actually getting a purl bump instead, because it's the way the stitches lay at the edge, because of there being purl bumps in that column next to the ladders. You're going to feel like you're picking up purl bumps instead of ladders. So just be a little aware of that, and you can kind of improvise around there. And as you're coming up to that seam, you want to make sure that your chevron is coming together correctly. If you feel like you're off, this is another one of those things that's really easy to rip out and do again. And since this seam is so tiny anyway, it's not going to be too much of a hardship. So when I'm coming to this chevron over here, this ladder actually looks like a purl bump. And so I'm going through the purl bump. And when I come over to the right hand side, it's going to be the same thing, right where that chevron comes together. And then we'll just go back to picking up ladders again. And so I'm going to finish up these last few stitches, and I will show you that when we get to the marker at the top, which shows where the bottom of our armhole is, then we're going to be able to tie that off. Okay. So I'm continuing to get the purl bump between the good column of V's and the wonky stitch on the end. Is it relaxing watching somebody else sew? I hope so. I'm going to go ahead and take out my marker now. I know it's about a stitch or two down from the next chevron, so that's what I'm working towards. And we are very close to done. And just take this slow and steady. Don't feel like it's a race. There's nobody timing you, nobody watching you. It's just you and the yarn. So we're going to get up to where we think this seam ends. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 more stitches, and then what I'm going to want to do is on the last one, I'm going to go ahead and get that last ladder, and then I'm going to pull my yarn tight, get that seam to come together. There you go. And don't pull that yarn too tight because you don't want to shorten the seam. But that's what the seam looks like. Pretty good. Okay, and so when I get to the end, I ended up by doing a ladder on the left. So I'm going to bring my yarn up from underneath on the right, from underneath on the left. This is another figure 8 knot, isn't it? And then underneath on the right again, and that is your figure 8 knot. It's done. You pull it tight and cut and weave in that end. Cut it, weave in that end, and you are good to go. And that is your side seam. And then this is your armhole. Welcome to your armhole. So thank you so much for being here. Do the same thing on the other side seam, and then you'll be set. And There's going to be one more video in this series of 3, finishing the front and the back. The next one is going to be picking up these stitches along the armhole for the sleeve. So please stop by and check out that video too. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.